5, 4, 3. And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side. He's in the bottom corner here on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, the MGoBlog Roundtable Crew from MGoBlog. Excited that they have their latest preview edition out and available. Hail to the Victors 2023. Outstanding. They do a great job every single year. They do a great job every single week on the roundtable. Starting off first with the man who started it all at MGoBlog, Brian Cook, BC. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I wouldn't get this edition of Hail to the Victors. It's really depressing. We had to write about the upcoming football season, and it's like, oh man, this is going to be a doozy. I don't know what the Northwestern equivalent of Hail to the Victors would be. Bring your champions there. Our meet 2023 is probably not a cheery place right now. But anyway.
But it is a definite banger of a magazine. You guys, you did a great job, even when there wasn't a lot to, even when we were talking about, oh, they're going to maybe win the national championship. There's always an exciting read. A year where they're expected to contend for a national championship, though, Seth, again, it makes it that much more exciting.
I've got like these. I've got these. No one can see it on the radio, but like I've got stacks over here of back issues that people wanted to buy because people are like, I want to read the 2014 one because they didn't read that one because what was the point? I didn't read the 2021 because I wasn't really excited for that season. A lot of people didn't buy the 2021 one because they weren't that excited for the season. And then I went and looked at some of the pages on and then like the first article in 2021, it's like, hey, we're not going to beat Ohio State this year, but
right. Right. No, it's a different day. So
we don't get it all.
I know we talked about it again, but it bears repeating if folks want to get their hands on this year's edition and maybe highlight some of the great features that are in the magazine, lay it all out for them.
Yeah. Just go to MGoBlog.com in the upper right-hand corner. If you're on your mobile, just scroll down. You'll see the links for it. You can buy it. You can buy a digital copy, which is a PDF right now. You can get the Kindle edition that's on Kindle right now. It's a little bit extended because I lose all the images in the process. Print edition, we're going to be a little tight. The most I can print, I got another 200. I created an interest list. The interest list filled up immediately. So print editions are going to be hard to come by. When we do get those in a few weeks, I'll probably put them online, and if you jump on them, you can get one. But there's only going to be so many. We're going to sell out of these really fast. But you can definitely get it on the digital edition right now. You can get the Kindle edition right now. I think this is probably our best one yet. And I don't just mean you go through the positions, and we start with the quarterback and go down to the defensive backs, and you don't really get a position where we're worried about something until the end of the the cornerbacks, the second cornerback. And it's funny because we get to, there's one piece that we do every year. It's the offense overall and the defense overall. We get to the offense overall, and usually that's okay, what could go wrong? And it took us forever to get this article out because there's nothing we can think of.
Yeah. Injury is really what you look to,
right? I know, but injuries happen to everyone. It's right. It's uninteresting to talk about it because it's if injuries happen, here's the backups. Well, other than JJ, okay, we lose Blake Corum, a Heisman candidate. You don't want to do that. What happened when we lost Blake Corum last year? We still beat Ohio State. We still won the Big Ten, right? So you got so many players that could step up for the guys. The only positions I think that we're really, you don't want to take a hit are safety, cornerback, obviously, and quarterback. That everything else has, at least one more guy who can kind of step in and be close enough to the starter that you're not going to have a major drop off. I mean, you're not going to replace Blake Corum, and arguably we would win TCU if Corum's there, but doesn't matter. That, Edwards is great, right? And they have other running backs now. We have an article that Scott Bell put together about how you use those two running backs together. I think it's fascinating, especially because I personally love wheel routes are my favorite play in football. And he's just what does Michigan need to do? Wheel routes. Because what do wheel routes do? They make your running back or your tight end lined up against somebody who can't cover him well. And that's we have the guy to throw it downfield. Yeah.
That's how Donovan Edwards is going to get over 1,000 yards this year. Wheel route, splitting them out. He's going to be a bigger piece of the pass game this season than he was last year. So, Blake will get his 1,000 and Donovan will get his combined 1,000, and that offense is it's going to roll. It's going to roll.
Yeah.
Can't wait. A lot to look forward to. If you haven't gotten your copy of Hail to the Victors, you go to MGoBlog.com. Now, obviously there are some folks who like to have the physical magazine in there.
I know.
What does that timeline look like?
Oh man! All right, so we're looking probably late July for me to have them in hand, and I only have 2,200 copies. The problem is we use too good a paper, and no one produces our paper anymore. I don't want to get into the whole story, but basically, Time Magazine stopped using high quality paper, and once they were not using that paper, no one was producing that paper anymore. They just make smaller pieces and sell them for the same price. So next year we're going to have to go down, and we'll be able to print a lot more. This year we were scrounging up the last of the good stuff to have the high quality book that we always make.
Gotcha. All right, folks, MGoBlog.com. Be sure to get your copy of Hail to the Victors 2023, a great guide to help you get ready for this, what is looking like it's going to be an outstanding football season. But Brian, back to your intro. Not looking like it's going to be I guess it wasn't looking like it was going to be an outstanding year anyway in Evanston, but certainly not looking like it's going to be an outstanding year now. How surprised are you by the revelations of what took place for basically 17 years that Pat Fitzgerald was the coach down there?
Well, on one level, you can't be surprised, I guess, because it seems like every university has this issue. And on another level, though, it is remarkable how probably a lot of people in the culture didn't think that anything was wrong with it. And I think we're learning this a lot about various institutions, that there's always someone doing something, and there's a lot of people enabling that. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to do about it, except is when these things come to light, get the student newspaper on it, I guess, because they were going to try to get away with a 2 weeks of suspension in the middle of July for these kind of things. And then I don't know what it's called. I think the Daily Northwestern gets on it, and and then Fitzgerald's out the door. So it's, these days with newspapers being pretty much gutted across the country, like the student newspaper is going to be able to do some remarkable work. So kudos to them. And Sharon Moore, don't take that job.
Yeah, I don't think, I think it's obviously a name that they would be interested in, but as we'll get into, because I want to definitely talk the Michigan side of this, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't, for a guy with his ceiling as a coach and the kind of job that he'll be able to step into if he waits for some of these other ones to open up. Northwestern doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But getting back to Brian's point, so there was an investigation. They hired a firm to do an investigation. This firm finds 11 players that corroborated the whistleblower's accusation. So so the hazing took place. And then, like Brian said, they were going to do this 2 week suspension because Pat Fitzgerald didn't know about it, according to the report, right? So what that said to me, two things. One thing it said to me was the scope of the investigation was very narrow. They focused on this instance of hazing with this team. Maybe it's the last couple of years, this window of Pat Fitzgerald's tenure. They didn't go back to 2008, 2009. They didn't do that. That's number one. Number two, man, like Brian said, they thought they were going to just be able to dump this on a Friday. He got suspended, and that was going to be it. It was going to be glossed over. All the student newspaper did was talk to the whistleblower and put it out for everyone to see, and they shamed the president into taking further action because there were no new revelations that forced him to make that decision, caused him to make that decision.
I mean, when you look at when's the last time there was a coach who coached over a decade and there wasn't some sort of scandal that came out that was just happening, right? I know Harbaugh's starting to get to that point, but like he's been under the heat so much in that time that we might be in the clear because we had the bro thing happen while it was there. But like, you look what happened under Schembechler's regime. He was there a very long time. You look what happened in D'Antonio, the stuff that was going on at the end of his career. You look at Paterno, you look at Kirk Ferentz when they had all that stuff going on, right? Like the coaches who are there for a long time, who get established and become a program into themselves, they start to get this feeling that I'm invulnerable, that everything I'm doing is okay because I've been doing it long enough. They cannot do this. I am this program. And at that point, it's hard for people inside the program, people around them, to like point and say, no, you can't do this here, right? Like, this is awful. And hazing is always one of those weird things. I joined a fraternity when I was in college. We hazed I got hazed when I was a freshman, and then when I was a sophomore, I was part of the group that got rid of hazing in our fraternity. And I remember a lot of the pushback I got from that was based on I went through it. I thought it was funny. I was fine. And
so can you talk about what was?
Yeah, I don't mind talking.
You can't share what kind of.
I don't mind sharing. Most of it's just dumb. Like they told us to bring. I don't want to share all of the secrets and whatnot, but like every day of Hell Week, you had to bring we had to go shopping for a bunch of stuff, and most of it ends up in our underwear. And like one time, like after one day of this, they told us to buy a carton of eggs. So one of my pledge brothers had the idea of hard boiling the eggs. So when they went on, we were told to put them on our heads, and then they were just hard boiled eggs. And then one of the brothers was mad that we didn't bring the salt. So he sent us out to go get salt. It's supposed to be a bonding thing. It's supposed to be like, okay, we're all going through this together, and like we all bond together. And what it ends up being, somebody can't control themselves. Somebody, it triggers some piece of some inside humans where you just want to be cruel to people and look down on them and treat them horribly. And it always happens. And there's always like one brother in the fraternity or one, former player who overdoes it. And everyone just kind of talks about it and everyone lets it go and it's really bad stuff that they can do. And that's why you need to get rid of this thing, because you can't control everybody.
Here's the thing. So what you described, hey, kudos to you for getting rid of that. I've heard of that type of hazing, right?
Yeah.
You do things to kind of put the youngsters in their place. They might have to carry bags. They might be taped to a goalpost.
You got to sing. You get yelled at. Yeah. You got to stand in place for a long time.
This is different, right? I mean, this, in a sport where some of the stereotypes are about hyper machoism, right? And we know this is one of the sports where it is deemed most difficult for an athlete to come out. For the sexualized nature of this hazing is, I mean, that's what, because they were like, well, Pat Fitzgerald is from a different time. I don't know any time where this type of hazing would have been something where it's like, yeah, that's cool, that's funny. Like this seems like it's on a different level of egregiousness, at least to me.
It's never supposed to come out. That's the idea. The whole idea is that you're never supposed to talk about it afterwards. And it's supposed to be
I've been in locker rooms, known a lot of people in locker rooms as well, college and pro. I've never heard of something like this.
I'm not defending it, but it takes a lot of forms, and that's the point. That like once you go and look at it, because the whole point is to like not talk about it, it's to like keep it, within the brotherhood, right? It can take forms that are absolutely awful, because the whole idea is coming up with something that is awful. That what you're doing ultimately is doing something horrible to somebody, or what they consider horrible, right? And so that someone had that idea once and they went with it, and then it became the thing. But like whenever you uncover this box, whenever you open that Pandora's box, it's going to be ugly, and it could have been something else just as ugly. And the whole idea that Pat Fitzgerald didn't know. I mean,
and see, that's why it was clear to me that they narrow, because if you go back to 2008, And he's talking about he didn't know in 2008. Well, it's strange credulity then if he didn't know for 17 years.
He played there.
This is going on,
He played
right?
there. Probably hazing. He probably got hazed himself when he was the linebacker at Northwestern.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, Brian. So it's Northwestern, right? So you apply that stereotype. He said, we recruit captains and honor roll people, and it just doesn't. And then he's supposed to be this clean cut guy. This is the total antithesis of what that school and what that coach seemed to stand for. And that's another thing that makes it so jarring that this happened at Northwestern, right? So now moving forward, what caliber of job is this? So let's go there. This gets us to Sharon Moore. What caliber of job, what caliber of coach do you think Northwestern will be able to lure?
I think their best option is a retread who wants to cash out. So a guy like Sharon Moore, at some point in the near future, he's going to get a job at a place that hasn't recently gone 1-11 for 2 or 3 years, right? Like that has the worst recruiting profile in its conference, although Mel Tucker's doing a good job trying to change that. And they don't even get the benefit of the Big Ten West anymore. So that kind of ability to pop up and miraculously get to a Big Ten championship game is pretty much dead and gone at this point. So it looks like a kind of job where any up and comer who has the idea that they're going to want to take some jobs and then get to a terminal college job, they're not going to want that. Mm-hmm. But a guy like maybe Wake Forest, Dave Clawson, who's done a great job at a very difficult place to win, probably doesn't have the upward mobility at this point in his career, or Willie Fritz I believe he's at Tulane now, who's done a great job at a lot of small schools, but is 63. Those guys could be looking at the contracts that Big Ten schools are able to give out, and they're like, yeah, let's do that, even if my chances of doing a great job there are a little remote. So I think that kind of they can get a good coach, but I just don't think they're going to get like the offensive coordinator who's a hot name.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Seth. Your opinion on the caliber of job Northwestern is and the caliber of coach.
Yeah, Northwestern historically was a better job than it projects to right now. The problem is that everything that's happening in college football is going against Northwestern, right? Like now you have to get more transfers in. Northwestern has a lot of the same problems that Michigan has with transfers. They're like one of two only other schools that have Michigan's problems with transfers. And I know they get some guys in, and then like I went and researched which guys they got in and how they did it, and it was like they did the same kind of Apollo 13 level troubleshooting that Michigan has to get to do that. So you don't have access to the transfer portal. Everybody else does. You don't have the Big Ten West to sit in anymore. You're going to have, a rotation. You're going to have to go out to California and play. But you still are in the Big Ten, and you still if your end goal is to be a Big Ten coach, they have a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. And Fitzgerald made a lot of money. So I don't think that it's necessarily something like the hottest coordinator would go for. But right. If there's somebody who's up and coming, a little young, and you didn't really want to try it yet, but now's your opportunity to have an idea. I think that this is a great opportunity for Northwestern to try somebody who's got an idea, who wants to have a different system or different way of approaching it, because it's a new world and everyone's going to be battling in the portal. Everyone's going to be fighting over, the guys that you can spend a lot of money on. And Northwestern really could be a team that tries something different and does things, and they've always been that way. They were one of the first spread teams, right? Mm-hmm. They took on the hybrid linebacker position way before everybody else did. So they've always been trying interesting things there, and I think that would be the perfect hire for them. Now, if they don't get that, Brian's right. There's other guys out there. They could also just take a Lovie Smith kind of guy who just lasts 2 years, and then you get your guy, right? So it depends what you want to do, but people forget that they have the same amount of money that every other Big Ten team has, even though they're Northwestern. So they could make up a lot of the difference with.
Yeah. So here's the so the things, some things that are different. You mentioned the competitive balance in the Big Ten. much
Mhm.
different. The portal, different. NIL, its influence, that's different. Now, Northwestern, on the positive side of things, their facilities are much better than they were when Pat Fitzgerald first took over. So they
Mhm.
do have some things that would be appealing, but not to a Sharon Moore or Brian Hartline caliber of assistant. Because can you really use that job as a stepping stone to one of the points you made, Brian, looking at Northwestern over the last couple of years? There have been peaks and valleys there were peaks and valleys in Pat Fitzgerald's tenure, but that was by design. He knew he couldn't recruit at the level that the high level Power Fives could. So you get some of the lower tier guys and you develop them, right? Maybe you get a blue chipper here or there. You compete every 3 or 4 years. But this was a lower valley here the last couple of years than I think we've seen in his tenure. And I wonder whether he was ever going to be able to get it back to contending in a more competitive, it's not the West anymore, but with USC and UCLA in the mix now, it pushes Northwestern down a rung. And I just don't know that's a job where you can achieve even the Pat Fitzgerald level of success anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. And the other thing you're looking at as a guy coming in as a coach is that it's extremely likely that you're going to be having a lot of home games that aren't home games.
Right.
Like, that's just, it's a situation that you walk into and it just doesn't, I don't think it has a lot of appeal for someone who has bigger ideas than I'm going to coach Northwestern for a paycheck.
Right. I'm right there with. So if I'm Sharon, you hang out and say, I think his name was thrown out because he's a hot assistant. He's well known in the Chicagoland area. That's his recruiting territory. He obviously Big Ten familiar, all that. It makes sense for Northwestern to be interested in him. But the other way around, a coach like that is not going to look at Northwestern as a destination job. It's a stepping stone. Is that a job that will catapult you up a rung? And I just don't think it is. If you wait, there are going to be some Louisville caliber jobs out there. West Virginia's going to come open. Missouri could come open. I mean, Missouri's SEC, but still, West Virginia is one that I look at. Boston College is going to come open. I think that's a better job even. I mean, there's some easier, better jobs that are going to come out that are easier stepping stones for a Heartline. To me, Northwestern is either looking for a hot position coach at the Power 5 level, a hot coordinator at the Group 5 level, or a head coach is looking to step up, or the retread that might be looking for another opportunity. So Ira brought up Paul Chryst, guys, and I think Paul Chryst would take that job in a heartbeat.
Yeah, he would, but that's a terrible idea.
I mean, where's Jim Leonard right now?
I don't know where Jim Leonard is.
That would be the guy I would, if I was Northwestern, I'd be
look for the knife for Paul Chryst back. Yeah, he definitely knifed Paul Chryst, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only thing that could convince someone who's a young up and comer to take this job is if they are a Northwestern true believer. And Mike Kafka is
there's no way, dude.
NFL offensive coordinator.
There's no way.
I know, but that's the only thing I could think of is that if Mike Kafka just has a love for Northwestern, if he's Pat Fitzgerald, right? Like Pat Fitzgerald had his flaws, but from a Northwestern perspective, he was never going anywhere else in his life. So
I think that there's like I said, if you're a young coach who will do things differently, this is why I kind of thought about Jim Leonard, because the guy still runs a 3-4 cover 2 like they did in the 70s, right? And he teaches it well, and he knows where all the talent's buried in Wisconsin, so he knows where to go around that area. I think he'd be kind of perfect hire. And why would Jim do it? Because it's not a bad lifestyle. If you're thinking of I want to get, and most coaches do. Most coaches are I want to get to the pinnacle. And until I win, I'm good enough to win a Super Bowl. Until I win a Super Bowl, I've not hit my mark, right? But Leonard might be one of those guys who's I want to live in Evanston, Illinois, which is a gorgeous town, right? I want to, and you get a nice house if you live in Northwestern and have a nice house, and live in Evanston, and raise my kids there. And if I win 8 games every other year or something like that, or once every 3 years, and they're happy with that. Like, if that's where the expectations are, and you're going to be there for, next 10, 11, 12 years or something, and that's going to be your career. And if you have success there, that's the other thing. If you succeed at Northwestern, people pay attention to that more than they do at like Purdue, which is weird because Purdue and Northwestern are under more similar things than people realize. But like, if you win at Northwestern, people still remember that they were just dogs for 40 years and still take that seriously. So like, people have stepped forward to the Notre Dame job from Northwestern in the past. Like, it still has that, if you do well here, and well is like 8-4, right? Then we'll consider you for a major job. So I agree. Sharon, don't do it, man. You could get the Michigan job next year.
I mean, look, and I was talking
Hardline's
I was talking to my guy at the SEC Network, and he was like, "Man, look out for Oklahoma. And if you hang out in a couple years, if Brent Venables doesn't get it rolling, he could be out." And this is coming from SEC folks. So if you're Sharon, you're making near a couple $1 million now. You can wait to see what better jobs will come open. And if you don't feel like better jobs come open, there are worse things than making close to $2 billion a year as Michigan's coordinator.
If I'm Sharon, I'm on the phone with every NFL team that has a coaching opening every year and be like, let me tell you about this Jim Harbaugh guy. He is.
Right. I hear you. No, but man, Jim Leonhard. So that's not a name but that actually makes sense, because I think that the bloom is off the rose a little bit with Jim Leonhard. His alma mater wouldn't hire him, right?
Right.
And so you got to ask why. He was a hot assistant. He had some support within the university, and the talk in coaching circles was that he knifed Paul Chryst, and that's really going around. And so if you're Northwestern, that might be an opportunity for you to get a coach whose profile is a bit damaged.
Yeah.
You might
That's a feature, not a bug. If you know at Northwestern, they're like, "Hey, you knife Paul Chryst, come on down."
Wait, who didn't Paul Chryst knife Paul Chryst?
So Paul Chryst made a major mistake. Paul Chryst's biggest mistake was he bet his program on Graham Mertz, and that was a huge. And then I guess his recruiting. It sounds like that kind of fell off too, and he received some criticism. It's not like he did everything right. What I thought, he had done enough. I mean, you're talking about a Big Ten Coach of the Year. He had done enough to have an opportunity to recover from the mistake. But the word that I got was Chryst was like, Jim Leonhard was definitely working the back channels to knife that dude to the point where he wasn't going to get an opportunity to fix it. So I think that dude can coach. Now his style of offense is probably not the way to win at a Northwestern. But you got to figure that this time off and, being an analyst down in Texas, you got to feel like he's probably trying to evolve a little bit in that way. The dude can coach a program. I think they could do worse than Paul Chryst, and you be getting a guy who's going to come, and that's a destination job for him.
I mean, I guess. He does fit that retread, but I just feel like someone steeped in the Wisconsin way is just going to land like a wet fart in that program because they just don't have the horses, right? Mm-hmm. They occasionally have an inexplicable first-round talent, but they don't have that culture that Wisconsin had with their offensive line, where every offensive line was one of the originators of the spread. And I'm sorry, I got to pause it.
No, you're good. You're good. I had Noah on the air. I've had Quincy on the air. We've had Gracie on the air. They all make their debuts during the show, Brian. So it happens, man. You gotta give her a mic from time to time, bro.
My kid announced his potty training on the MGoBlog podcast one time.
Yeah, that was good. I like that part.
Yeah. So look, I'm not holding Chryst up, and we'll get off of Northwestern. I'm not holding Chryst up as like this is the guy. I'm holding him up as like, man, I don't know how much better they could do. That's really what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, to me, I would rather take a chance on someone who has an offense that kind of looks like yours, which is why I mentioned Dave Clawson, because Clawson's done a really good job with not a whole lot of talent, and that program in the ACC has about the same profile as Northwestern. So that made more sense to me personally than going for Paul Chryst. But I mean, he is out there. I wouldn't be my choice personally if I was Northwestern's athletic director, but clearly I am not.
I give Chris Creighton a call. I'll give Chris Creighton a call at Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, I mean that guy. I don't know. I don't know I don't want to speculate, but it feels like there's something terribly wrong with Chris Creighton, because why doesn't he get another job? He's done the best job in the history of Eastern Michigan football. I was just making a joke. I know nothing unsavory about Chris Creighton, but it is inexplicable that he's still there, because it feels like at some point someone would notice this.
Mm-hmm. And he runs a spread. Why he's basketball on grass all day. So, that seemed to make sense that they give him a look. So one of these schools giving him a look. We'll see what happens. Whatever the case, I think it'll be them making a move for a permanent coach after the season. The most intriguing thing about Northwestern right now is who's going to show up at media day to deal with the media. Are they gonna send this interim guy, or is the AD?
Did they officially announce he's the interim? Because I don't think there's been an announcement yet, has there?
We haven't.
He's just holding the ship above water at the moment. I just feel for those 3 players that they announced as their representatives that are going.
Yeah, bad deal. Bad deal, man. We need to get to a break. Some interesting changes on the horizon when it comes to NIL. We've been educated the last couple of weeks on nonprofits and how they can affect the NIL space, or how they can't affect the NIL space. And now with news this morning, 7 collectives, combining their efforts to maybe bring some regulation to the NIL space. I wonder, will this be the thing that brings some order to the chaos? I'll get you guys' take on that as well. Stay tuned here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket.
Clear.
Anybody talk to Kurt Anderson?
Man, no. I've been haven't reached out to Kurt.
I mean, I'm sure his phone's blowing up from old Michigan guys right now, but
the tough thing is, a lot of this seems to center around the linemen too, which is tough. So no, I haven't made that call. Been reluctant to do so, but I will. Mm-hmm. I will. All those guys kind of swept up there. Yeah. All those guys are swept up in that too. Mike Bajakian is a Michigan guy, and they clearly jumped over him. So I wonder, was that a Billy McColt type of thing? Whereas he would seemingly be the next in line, but because he had been there longer and therefore more attached to Pat Fitzgerald, probably better to go with the guy who hadn't even coached the game at Northwestern yet in Braun. Mm-hmm. They haven't named him, but he's likely to be named, they say.
Right. The idea is to distance yourself as much as possible from the old staff, because you don't know, right? You're still investigating. You're still trying to pull together who's responsible and who's not. But I mean, yeah, I would not be surprised. I'd like not casting stones. I'm not saying that it happened. I would not be surprised that if you look into like 1990s Michigan, that there was probably some hazing going on every time.
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt there probably was. But I just find this to be different, man. So Devin, I was on the phone with Devin the other day. It was this day before yesterday. And he said, "You see Pat Fitzgerald?" Because he must have been in a bunker somewhere. He said, "You see Pat Fitzgerald got fired?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, you hear about that sexualized hazing?" He said, "What? Sexualized hazing?" And then I went over all of the things that were said to have happened. And he was like, "Man, there'd be all kind of fights in the locker room if this happened in any locker room I was in." And that was my immediate reaction. Like, I've heard of hazing. I've heard some egregious things like, abuse and paddles and, things that are abhorrent. But this is on another level from that, even at least to me. At least to me.
Yeah, I think there's just the occasional locker room culture where it's just like, this isn't a big deal. It's okay. And it's like, no, it's not. You're weird.
Right. Yeah. Good grief.
Yeah, man. I say again, this is not the tenor of any of the hazing that I went through, but the whole point is to have it be abhorrent. So it's supposed to be awful.
But
and whenever you
in a sport where, look, homophobia is a thing. This kind of demeaning kind of conduct, it just seems.
I would not condone it at all. I'm somewhat less surprised that it was like, we're not on the official air right now, so it's like the dry humping and stuff like that, like the stuff that like simulates rape. That was, it's awful. It's awful stuff, and I'm not that surprised that that's because like that's the whole point, is to have it just be absolutely something that you'd never want to talk about again.
Yeah, man. Anyway,
hey, guys, just to mention, since Seth, you had mentioned that you would not be surprised if there was hazing in the mid '90s at Michigan. I can tell you from that Chris Howard told a mutual friend of ours that no. Basically, his answer was, "Who the heck is going to haze Chris Floyd?" He said, "GTFO." It did not happen in Michigan. That conversation has been had recently.
That is true. I've heard many a story about Chris Floyd basically serving out his dose of act right.
Yeah, we're on the radio back on radio in about 30 seconds. Yeah, so I don't think that it happened, at least in that era. I don't think it was happening.
Chris Floyd is still, he still looks like I think Chris has like some property down in Colombia, like in what are those, like Medellin or something like that, right? I was like, hey man, aren't you worried about the drug lords? But then I remember it's Chris Floyd. So
he's fine.
Like, they ain't gonna mess with Chris Floyd.
Yeah, you don't mess with Sam Jack Wallet, Sam.
I went to Medellin. It's actually really nice. They got a couple of bad locations now, but it's a much different city than it was 20 years ago.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side. And our guys, our fellas, our brothers from MGoBlog with us. Hail to the Victors 2023 is available. Seth, tell the folks again how they can get their hands on their copy.
Go to MGoBlog.com and you'll see it up on the corner, or just go to MGoBlogStore.com, or you can go on Kindle and you can find it there. It's called Hail to the Victors 2023.
All right. So, man, I got a real education last week. Seth, I can't remember if we got into the IRS memo last week where they basically told all these collectives or all these schools that were looking at NIL as a tax write-off that's not going to fly. And, to hear accountants talk about it, they are almost like, you didn't know this was never going to fly? And I didn't. I thought it was good. I mean, you see the different concepts out there, and it just seemed like, okay, you attach to a charity. It seemed pretty cut and dry that you be able to achieve what like entities like Hale were looking to achieve. And that has been brought into serious question as I've been educated now by accountants, including Ira's dad. Like, you can maybe have a portion of a contribution written off, but it's not like you can make a $10,000 donation to a collective to benefit a student athlete and have the entirety of that $10,000 be written off, or even most of that $10,000 be written off, if the majority of that money was going to get into the hands of the student athlete, which changes the game. As the Ohio State collector said in the AP report, he said, it's game over for us. This puts us out of business.
I mean, Ohio State was sloppy. Texas was even more sloppy. The the way they're putting it together, there were some simple things they could have done that they just didn't bother to do, that Michigan was a little bit more on top of when they put the Hale Collective together. But you're always going to have this one problem when you're trying to when you're trying to run a charity for any purpose other than running a charity. And that is, you have the value has to be for the beneficiaries of the charity. Beneficiaries cannot be the people running the charity. So if you need to pay a famous person, right? Let's say you're going to go and pay Brian Cook to go and be the spokesman of your charity, right? You have to pay what Brian Cook is worth. You cannot use
$2.
That is not true.
And not
I'm just
any less.
a magazine right now. I know for a fact that you're valuable, especially because I have to do all the speaking engagements now. So they're like, if I could sell a Brian Cook speaking engagement right now, I could get top dollar.
Yeah,
Dan, you're getting a deal. But like, let's say you're selling let's say Brian Cook's your spokesman. You cannot pay Brian Cook 90% of what your charity brought in order to have him be your spokesman. You have to pay a nominal amount, and they expect him to take less than his normal value because he's doing it for charity, and he's going to get some nice value from it himself, and that's how you have to function. And the problem is they cannot fit a gigantic NIL operation like $10 million or whatever these NIL operations are into that tiny little hole and pay these guys enough to be valuable where you're not doing anything for the charities at that point. And when they look at the IRS looks at it and it's obvious they're not doing it for the charities. They're not doing it to make the world better. They're doing it to pay the guys who are to pay the players. But you can fit a small amount of into it. So like you say, you can do a partial write-off. Or Michigan can be really nice to one of its donors and let them be the person who donates all the money that they need, right? But you could probably only get to like $1.52 million, and you would have to be doing a lot of charity work just to use that as an excuse. Because again, the charity, the value has to be going towards the beneficiaries of the charity, not the people who are doing the work.
Yeah, Brian, this is as much as we had to adjust our thinking about NIL and how much it would level the playing field, which we have obviously started making. We adjusted our expectations on that. Now Michigan playing catch up. This seems to hinder the catch up. If you can't do this is going to be, to me, one of the major components of the NIL fundraising campaign. And you don't have this. It's more of a setback for an institution like Michigan, and I think it would be for some of the places in the South that will just go back to business as it used to be. Let's go to a church and run some money through a church and get it in the hands of a Heisman Trophy winner kind of thing, right? They'll just go back to doing things like that.
I guess. I mean, so they give it to the church, and then that's tax deductible, I guess. And that's
if the church, then they give scholarships all the time. They do things all the time. They've done so.
No one's going to investigate. Could you imagine being the elected official goes investigates a church in the South? Good luck with that.
Well, in any case, I mean, I guess that's a slight competitive advantage for people who want to keep it off the books. I just don't think it's a huge deal. I mean, if Michigan wanted to, they could turn their money cannon. I mean, there's some wealthy people who went to Alabama or Texas A&M or whatever, but this is the University of Michigan. If we were inclined as an institution to turn a hose of money on various football recruits, we could do that. It's not an issue of capacity; it's an issue of desire and will.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do some follow-ups and kind of ask more around, because I remember having a discussion with you guys about, hey, what do you think they're going to be able to raise in this fundraising campaign with Empower? Do you think it's realistic to say, $12 to $15 million? That's not enough to fund it past 1 year, but that was kind of my starting point. They'll raise that with no problem. $12 to $15 million, they'll get that in this fundraising campaign. And as they've gotten into it, what I've gotten back is that maybe that I was a little optimistic with talking about the ease with which they were going to be able to raise that number. Maybe they'll get there, but it's not like, it's going like, they made 5-6 stops and boom, they got it covered. Like there's work to do in that regard. And I guess I'm a little surprised by that, but at the same time, not when you can't have any of the contributions be written off, which I thought was going to be a major component of them being able to raise that amount of money.
I'm sure that hit them. I imagine some of those guys who have that kind of money are, have access to their own tax attorneys who probably were like, yeah, probably not going to happen, man. No, let me meet with Harbaugh. We'll figure it out. That might not happen. Because these guys it's not their first time working with money and trying to dodge taxes. I wish that people would just say like, hey, we're Michigan, let's just pay our taxes. Like that would solve the problem. But I understand like that's an issue. So I think a part of the problem is that like they've been doing this for so many years a different way. And you're not talking about that many people. You're talking about a few very specific people who've had personal handlers who give money to the university as well as the football program, and in many cases, way more to the university than the football program. And they're used to having something in return. And then like the things that they do for the football program, a lot of them have a thing, right? One guy is in charge of like, I provide them new lockers this year. I'm the guy who bought the lockers, right? And you go and meet them and then they introduce them like, here's the guy who got you guys all new lockers. Yay. Here's the guy who bought the new banner. Yay. Right. Like, and you're the guy. And we've been doing it that way for so long that we're good at it. We're good at selling it. We're good at presenting it to them. And we've done a very good job of convincing them that they're very valuable to the program by doing this thing. And now we're coming to them and saying, stop buying a bench, buy a bench player. And that's something that they've always been against. So it's not that easy of a transition. And like one or two guys changing their minds could make a big difference in that. But you look at Ohio State and they were able to raise a lot of money very quickly. So Ohio State's whole operation has always been geared towards the football program is the most important thing in the world. In Michigan, the donors are just not constructed that way and have not been handled that way for many years.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So yeah, noteworthy that they quoted I can't remember the name of the collective IRA that the Ohio State nonprofit. They were like, we're done. It's over for us. we can't operate anymore based on this IRS memo. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact this has moving forward. It also will be interesting to see, maybe we can get into this next week. So the Champion Circle is one of 7 collectives in IRA. You had this article from The Athletic is where it appeared, right? Where these 7 collectives have gotten together and they are going to try to regulate the space. They're going to try to put together maybe like a registry of reputable representatives. They are going to eventually, one of their core objectives is to get revenue sharing, right? And now they're a long way away from that, but this sounds like to me, guys, it's not a union, but it sounds like it's like the foundation, if you will, Seth, for maybe pseudo union down line, because the only way that you're gonna be able to, compel revenue sharing is you got the threat of something. Like, what can you withhold in order to compel them to give you a piece? Well, sounds like they're starting to maybe not unionize, but kind of pseudo union operate.
I mean, sometimes you can do the same exact thing and avoid the word because the word is what scares people, and the operation is very, very, very common. Like what you're doing, right? Let's just be honest about what we're doing right now. We're going from a communist system with a huge black market to a capitalist system. That is what we're transitioning to. And how does capitalism maintain a balance of power between the workers and the work? They have unions, right? That's why we avoid communism, because we have people, the workers get together and say, look, we're valuable and we do things this way. Now we have more than that, right? We have trade shows and we have industry organizations, and we have, we have lots of different ways of handling these before it just gets down to the brass tacks. Now the big piece, the thing that they're going to fight over is TV money, right? That is a piece that the players have not gotten. All they've gotten so far is NIL, which was something that Olympians have had for years, right? But and obviously we're driving a truck through that because that's not enough. Now, for it to be enough, to get to the point where other things, where functions like the NHL functions or functions like any of the other leagues do, you have to give the players a piece of the main pie, which is the TV money. The players are realizing this. The only way for them to get that is to have some leverage, right? And the only way to have some leverage is to do that. Now, I don't think that's what these 7 collectives are gunning for right now. When they're putting themselves together, the point is not to let's create some power to get some leverage. The point is to say, let's get some control over this industry. It's the industry organization. And there's, you go into water and wastewater, there's the, the AWWA, and they're the people who run the organization.
We'll pick this up next week. We'll pick this up next week. And Brian, you got to see this message. And that was from Haji. He said the guest appearance is outstanding. So, young Miss Cook made her debut this morning, which is great. We got to get out of here, though. We'll see you next week here. Thanks for watching the MGoBlog Roundtable. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider. Until then, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTK, the ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports, Ann Arbor, a community.